As you probably noticed, the schedule for the evening has completely gone to pot. But like I think I told you last night, normal laws of physics and mathematics and time don't really matter at the weird weekend. Things get very strange. We will still finish just about on time. I'm not telling you who's having bits shaved off his talk just yet. But there's only one person who won't be having bits shaved off his talk just yet. Last year, after 8 years of trying, I managed to get Dr. Shuker to leave his reclusive existence in the West Midlands to come down and talk to us. And this year, for the second year running, I am very, very, very proud and very happy to announce my good friend, probably Britain's and the world's leading cryptozoological author. Yeah, he's even better than me. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Karl Shuker.
Thanks, John, for that. Obviously, I'm very pleased to be here. In fact, after 8 hours on the motorway, I'm very pleased to be anywhere. But it doesn't really seem a year since I was last here, as John was saying, introducing what was then my latest book, Extraordinary Animals Revisited, the first of my CFZ Press books, and here we are again with Dr. Shuker's case book. I'm quite got used to the title of that, I have to admit, yes. I can't help but think of Dr. Finley's case book, which is where we ripped the title from. But you're talking to the person who, in this book, has got a chapter all about winged cats, like that one up there, which is called On Wing and a Purr. So if I can get away with that, I get away with another one about a small fish, small blenny-like fish, in which I invite you to decide what it could be for yourself, and I somewhat groaningly entitled that A Blenny for Your Thoughts. If I get away with those, I can certainly get away with Dr. Shuker's case book. But seriously, this was a bit of a departure for me. I think most of you here will probably know me best for cryptozoology and cryptozoological writings, but what you may not know is I'm also interested in a lot of other mysterious phenomena. In fact, paradoxically, my best-selling book so far is a book on a wide range of cryptozoological and non-cryptozoological subjects, which came out in '96 called The Unexplained. And once again, I didn't exactly get hindered by the fact that the X-Files was doing very well on TV at the time. And it did very well, and I've wanted to do others since then. And I've done about, 400 or 500 articles on non-crypto subjects. But whereas I've had quite a few compilation volumes of the crypto stuff, I've never actually done a compilation of the non-crypto. And John and I were talking about this, and he said, why don't you put some of these together and do a completely non-crypto book? So that's how it began, but thinking about it about halfway through, I thought, well, we are talking, my books, you can't really bring out a book without any crypto stuff in it. So I've produced quite a few crypto chapters, and there's one on unicorns, not just the fabled ones, but potentially living ones, cryptozoological ones, and the diversity. Now, I don't think anyone's really looked at the diversity of unicorn types. I mean, you're looking at literally dozens of different unicorns. And then the chapter on the winged cats. I'm happy to say, after years of doing updates every so often, 14 times in other magazines on winged cats, I've finally been able to bring them all together, and I produced what I'm hoping is the definitive, comprehensive chapter on the whole subject. There'll be a lot of stuff that you've never seen before. Photos like this one, which has never been published before. This is an Anglesey winged cat from 1985. So there's a lot of stuff in there that's new. The book cover introduces another of my interests, sky creatures and sky beasts. The front cover is actually a painting by a friend of mine called Philippa Foster, which I'm glad to be able to use, never published before. So that's in. There's a chapter on mythological and mysterious creatures from Senegal and Gambia. There's another chapter on the mythological entities of the Australian dream time. So there's a fair few crypto stuff in, but also there's a lot of non-crypto. How to get through it all? There's 22 chapters. I don't think we'd be here all night, but there are things like ancient wonders, and some of the places I've been looking for things, such as Egypt, for the head of Ozymandias, the singing statue of Memnon, the Narmer Palette, which has two crypto creatures on it called serpopods, the Tower of Babel, the chirping pyramid, Quetzalcoatl, There's things like that. There's chapters on ghosts, aliens and UFOs, falls of creatures from the skies, frogs and fish, which, yes, I did call it, it's raining sprats and frogs. Yeah, okay, there's no such problem I won't stood down to. What else? I mean, I've written it. I mean, one chapter is particularly interesting because it's a recent visit by me. I decided I wanted to get away from it all for a time, and when I get away from it all, I really do. I went to Easter Island. According to the Lonely Planet Guide and the Rough Guide, it's the world's most remote inhabited locality, and boy, they weren't joking. Let's put it this way, I set off at 10:30 the Thursday morning in question from Birmingham. I arrived in Santiago in Chile at our time, 6 o'clock Friday evening, and then another 5 hours to fly to Easter Island. Easter Island is about 2,200 miles equidistant with Chile on one side and Tahiti on the other, and Pacific Ocean in between. It's about 20 miles across a volcano. It's triangular volcano at each apex, and obviously lots and lots of giant statues. And a lot of mysteries, a lot of misconceptions. Tor Heyerdahl was basically led wildly astray by some of the locals who thought it would be rather fun to give them ideas which were not based on facts. And being there, I actually found out a lot of things that you read in the books, the absolute gospel, and in fact it's nothing of the sort. So it was quite an eye-opening experience. But as I say, 22 chapters is a lot to talk about, so what I've decided to do is do a kind of slide presentation of some of the highlights. So if you're ready, David, we'll have a go at some of those. As I say, we started, chapter 1 is the Winged Cat chapter, in which I not only present every case that I've ever come across, which I think, as far as I can tell you, every case has been recorded. Also the most detailed series of photographs ever published, and the explanation, which I found out several years ago, as to what the winged cat phenomenon is all about, how it actually came about. So that is an example of the winged cat. Can we have the next slide? Okay, this is from a chapter on paranormal entities. This is a kind of wolfman. In the Shetland Islands, there's a creature called a wolver, which is basically humanoid bipedal with the head of a wolf. One thing this book has enabled me to do, which was good, is to get in touch with a lot of artists, particularly artists who haven't been published before. And I'm happy to say that there are a lot of totally new, exclusive illustrations, and this was one of them. This was by the Swedish artist Richard Svensson. Was absolutely brilliant at this kind of paranormal, preternatural entity, and he produced this. So this is part of the chapter on ghosts and the supernatural. Can we have the next one? Okay, now this is Easter Island. And one thing that comes to mind, you tend to think of Easter Island as the land of the giant stone heads, but in actual fact they're not heads, they are statues straight down to the waist. But over several hundred years, the soil has gradually built up, the undergrowth and so forth, and they're mostly buried. I mean, I'm 5'10", to give you an idea of scale, and that is just the head and shoulders. The body is still underground. So that is, I'd say, roughly 30-35 feet tall. The tallest were it standing is El Gigante, which is, I think, 71 feet in length, because it was so big, the people were not able to actually get it. They all carved in the volcano, Ranu. But this was so huge they weren't able to actually get it out of the statue, out of the volcano, so it stays there to the day. And I say it's massive, 71 feet long. So that one is quite a pygmy in comparison. Can we have the next one? Now this is quite interesting. Most people don't realise that the Moai, the name of the giant statue, actually had eyes. But during the kind of intertribal wars that took place, when each tribe knocked down each other's Moai until they were all flattened, the eyes dropped out and were lost. But a few years ago, some of them were actually discovered. The eyes were intact, and so they've been restored. The eyes are made out of shells, and the black pupil out of rock, or dark rock in some cases, coal in other cases. And the top knots are placed on top. I mean, an abiding mystery is how the top knots are actually placed on top of them. Originally, we could do it now obviously with cranes, but the original islanders from the 14th century, when they were creating these, how they actually got those on top, because they each weigh, 2, 3, 4 tons each single top knot. So to get them on a statue 20, 30 feet tall is quite an undertaking. We still don't know how they did it. Can I have the next one? This is probably the most famous, most photographed head, as it were. The body again is buried underneath of all of the moais, because it shows the long ears beautifully, the long-eared tribe versus the short-eared tribe. Again, that's what you read in all the books. It turns out that this is a story told by the locals to Tor Heyerdahl, and it's not based on fact at all. In actual fact, every tribe had a long ear. The long ear was basically the tribal leader. There were no separate factions of long ears and short ears. That is a complete myth that unfortunately Tor Heyerdahl believed. Can I have the next one? Oh, this is a replica. The real thing would be priceless. This is the famous Rongo Rongo script of the Easter Islanders. Sadly, all the people who could decipher it were, in the 19th century, were taken away to the Peruvian slave mines when Peru took over Easter Island, and they all either died there or they contracted smallpox in Peru and died. So unfortunately, no one can now correctly translate the Rongo Rongo. There have been a few attempts, and one or two very slight successes have been made with it, but by and large it remains as mysterious now as it was when it was first produced. As I say, that is a replica. There are only about 30 Rongo Rongo slabs left in the world, and they're all in Chilean or other major museums. There isn't even an original Rongo Rongo script on Easter Island. They themselves, their own museum has to have replicas because they are quite frankly priceless. Okay, the next one. Another place I went to actually check this out for myself is Woolpit, of the famous Suffolk village of the Green Children. I mean, a lot has been written about this over the years, but it was interesting to go and see it for yourself. You get a much better picture of what it was like. This is the church banner of Woolpit. As you can see, it shows the Green Children and the wolf, because Woolpit is a corruption of wolf pit. There were wolves back in the period of Henry II when this took place, about 850 years ago. I mean, you all know the story, I don't need to go into that. But there's an interesting little tie which I discovered, which I don't think anyone's ever mentioned before. Can I have the next picture? That's the one. I was just walking through the church, St Mary's Church of Woolpit, and I noticed this. There are a lot of carvings of mythological animals in the church, but this one particularly caught my attention because it's what's known as an opinicus. An opinicus is basically a monkey with wings. It has hooves as well, but it's a winged monkey. And I thought, well, this is interesting. Coincidence? I don't know. We're here in a village of Green Children who said that they came from a land of permanent twilight, tinted green, and in the church is a winged monkey. And over on the other side of the pond, we have an author from the 1900s, L. Frank Baum, who wrote a book called The Wizard of Oz, in which there is an emerald city and winged monkeys. Now, the Green Children, the story was known long before The Wizard of Oz, and it did occur to me, I wondered, did L. Frank Baum know about the church, the carvings, the winged monkey, the Green Children? Was it any sort of inspiration for The Wizard of Oz? Probably not, but it's just a very interesting coincidence. Of all the places to find a carving of a winged monkey, the one village in England associated with Green Children and a land of greenness and emerald city, as it were. Anyway, so move on from that. Next picture. Oh yeah, now again another artist. This is an Australian artist called Tim Collins, another talented artist who has done several pictures in the book. This is a book all about reptilian aliens, not just outer space aliens, but aliens from the early past, also aliens, internal aliens, as it were, from the reptilian brain. I've basically brought together a whole series of reptoid-related subjects. The one that interests me most, which I mentioned briefly in another book, but I've gone into it in a lot more detail here, is in the Bible, as you all know, Eve was tempted by the serpent, and the serpent was cursed by God to crawl on his belly, lose his legs and crawl on his belly. But the obvious thought is, well, okay, if that's the snakes we have today, if we take all this as truth just for the sake of saying so, if the snakes today are the cursed serpent, what did the serpent look like before it was cursed? When it had legs and when it stood up straight. And there are lots of ancient texts that discuss the pre-cursed serpent, the size of a camel, as tall and as handsome as man himself. And the interesting thing is, you get basically you get a reptoid alien look-alike. So I've discussed that in the book, along with quite a few others. I've discussed the Thetis Lake reptoid that was seen back in the 70s in British Columbia, more recent sightings, and brought all this together. But this is Tim Collins' sketch of what the alien reptoid would possibly look like, the kind of, V the Visitor's kind of reptoid. Okay, come to the next one. Oh yeah, this is probably one of my all-time favourites. I don't know whether you call it a zooform entity, certainly not cryptozoological, but I suppose what this is a marsupial black dog. This is what's known as a miri, or a miriula, and it's in the Dreamtime chapter. And a miri, as seen by the native Aboriginal people, is described as a large, black or very dark brown dog with red eyes, so far very black doggish, tends to inhabit water, will come out of water, and will follow people and sometimes try to lure them back into the water, which is somewhat puka-like, the Irish puka. But the interesting thing with the miri dog is it will change size. You'll look at it and one moment it's small, you look at it again it's huge, you look at it again it's the size of a pony, you look at it again it's small, and then it'll vanish altogether. So as I say, in a sense it's almost like a kind of marsupial black dog, the Antipodean's own equivalent of a black dog. And that picture again was done by Philippa Foster, who did the front cover. The front cover is actually called Cosmic Leap. It's actually based, you might know more than me, but it's based at a certain area in Somerset. So if any of you recognise where it is, you'd be interested to know exactly where. That is Miri, that's a Miriula, so that's one of the creatures in the Dreamtime chapter. Come to the next one. Now this is interesting, basically, not so much for what it is, as where I found it. This obviously is a thylacine, a Tasmanian wolf. There's a mythological creature in Australian Dreamtime lore called the Marukuri, which is described as resembling a dog, but with a long stiff tail with stripes across its back, which is obviously very thylacine-like, and probably based on the mainland thylacine when it was still there about 2,300 years ago. But what is interesting, this particular photo, because as far as I know, it's never appeared. I've looked through every thylacine reference I can find, every major book, paper, article, and I've never seen this photo. And where I got it from, pure luck, I've got a really ancient set of animal encyclopedias, about 80, 90 years old, and flicking through them, and there's this picture, which I thought, well, this is very unusual. So I thought, well, obviously long out of copyright. So I've published this in the book, so it's possibly the first time for almost a century this photo has been seen. I've absolutely no idea where it is, obviously a zoo, but no idea where. It's one of the American zoos, a London Zoo, Hobart, I've no idea. So again, if anyone has ever seen this photo and knows anything about it, we'd be interested to find out more. Okay, and the next one. This is another Philippa Foster picture, orbs around the Celtic cross. There's a chapter in there on balls, which is balls of light, or as I call them, goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Yeah. And again, all sorts of stuff. Ball lightning, obviously, you're going to have that, and you're going to have Foo Fighters, but you also have things like luminous bubbles of light that came out of the ground and swirled around people. What else? Bead lightning, entities called angels and gizmos, will-o'-the-wisps, obviously. So again, mixing some of the more well-known BOLs with some of the lesser-known ones. But that was such a striking picture. I thought, again, you notice the Cropfield circle, because there are connections between some of these BOLs and Cropfields. Okay, now the next one. Alright. John's got a comment about this one, but okay, the reason
the trouble is, Karl wouldn't let me put the caption I wanted to.
No,
it was a soulless, murderous killing machine sitting there next to the Terminator. But he wouldn't let me.
Well, I was going to say, one of them is a soulless, murderous killing machine. So is the other. But I decided not to do that. Now, actually, what that is, in the Ancient Wonders, there's a section on Talos. I mean, all you as kids have probably seen Jason and the Argonauts and the famous, slightly creepy scene where they're on Crete and the statue of Talos is on the treasure chamber, just a kind of frozen statue, as they think. They steal the treasure, which they're not supposed to, and they come outside and the head creaks around and looks at them, and basically the statue comes alive. And the idea is Talos, man of bronze, produced by Vulcan, the god of fire. And the idea was, could Talos really have been the first robot, the earliest robot? I mean, Talos is purely mythological, there's no suggestion he ever existed. People sometimes get Talos and the Colossus of Rhodes mixed up, which again I mentioned in the book, but that's something quite different. But I thought, well, that's somewhat of a descendant of Talos, so I thought, why not put it in? That was actually a memorabilia fair exhibit back in Birmingham. Okay, next one. Right, now, not particularly sharp, it's better close up. A few years ago I went to Egypt, and there were various things I was interested looking out for in Egypt, and this is one of them. This dates back to 3200 BC. It signifies the union of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt by King Narmer. King Narmer is on the left, holding the club in which he's attacking the poor ruler of Lower Egypt. He's conquering both Upper and Lower Egypt. But what's of interest to me, and probably to most of us, is on the right, the other side of the Narmer palette. That's what it's called. It's a votive, a ceremonial palette. It's these two creatures here, what are called serpopods. And what you've got is this absolute weird elongate neck. I think it's been distorted because in the centre you probably have something like a candle or something along those lines, so that the necks have been intertwined around the circle, but nevertheless, obviously the necks are completely out of proportion to the rest of the animal. And in the past I've seen quite a few pieces about the serpopods, or matatet as it's also called, that these perhaps could be Machelium bembe or something like that. And I thought, well, I'd just actually like to see this for myself. And in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo, I was just walking around one of the galleries, looking at all the mummies and sarcophagi and whatever, and I came to a case, and amazing, there it was. I have to admit, I'd forgotten about the Narmer palace, and there it was, directly in front of me. I thought, wow, I can finally get a good look at this, because most of the pictures are not particularly good. I mean, this isn't a particularly good picture. It's not mine, you're not allowed to take photos in the museum, so I couldn't get a photo. But as you can see, it really is nothing dinosaur-like at all. In fact, what you've basically got, if you look closely, you've got a monkey's body with this elongated serpentine neck, and then panther-like heads at the top. So serpopod, I suppose, is quite a good description. Pod being the head of the leopard-like head, and the serpent-like body. Neck. But the body itself is totally simian, totally monkey-like. And the idea was, okay, well, it's not Machelium bembe, could it be some other weird creature that has long since died out, we have no record of. But there are some other palettes which I've had a chance to have a look at, and it's quite interesting that you get, another idea for it was a giraffe, and on one of these other palettes you get the giraffe carving, an absolutely perfect normal giraffe, and underneath it is a serpopod, one that looks very like this one. So it's quite clear that it's not a serpopod, it's not a giraffe, it's not a Machelium bembe. It does appear to be truly mythological. It's next to a griffin and one of the others as well, so they obviously do put, in those days, they did put mythological creatures on ceremonial palettes mixed in with totally real creatures. So I think the living dinosaur idea for this goes completely out of the window. But it was nice to see it in the flesh, as it were, to get a really good view at it, because it has to be one of the oldest cryptozoological icons, as it were, still in existence. 3,200 years BC is quite an age for something like this to have been preserved. It wasn't the only thing as well in Egypt we had a look at. Can we have the next one? This is the famous singing statue of Memnon, about 65-70 feet tall. There are two of them in actual fact, the Colossi of Memnon on the west bank, almost opposite Luxor. And why it's called, or was called, the Singing Colossus is, following an earthquake, part of it collapsed. And then, from then on, every morning, the different ideas of what could cause it, there are a huge number of ideas, but it produces really strange singing strain every morning at roughly at the same time. And it became an oracle because people thought it was good luck to hear it, that if they did hear it, it would give them signs, portents for the future. And this carried on for quite some time. It literally became world famous. But then one of the Roman emperors decided it looked a shame half complete, so he decided to actually restore it. And of course, needless to say, once it was restored, the singing stopped. And it's remained silent ever since. But again, it's one of these mysteries that, but because he no longer sings, it was largely forgotten. But I'd read about it and I thought, well, it would be nice to actually see this. And so I've given quite a detailed description of the history behind this, I don't know, this singing wonder, this singing wonder. And close to that was something else which interested me. Come to the next one. I think one of my all-time favourite poems is one by Shelley, and it's called Ozymandias, and it basically told the story of a traveller in the desert sands finding a huge wrecked statue, a massive statue, just the head and the trunk of the statue, and a plaque. I can remember it. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look upon my works, ye mighty, and despair. In other words, many, many thousands of years ago, this statue stood in the middle of obviously a palatial empire, which was so fantastic that even God himself, in Ozymandias' view, would have been jealous of it. And in reality, all that's left now, as the traveller found, was just this wrecked statue and nothing else. The sands of time had come along and completely removed every trace of civilization. In other words, basically, it was a story of human folly, the vanity of human folly. And I'd always thought the whole thing very evocative, it was totally imaginary, until I went to the West Bank. It turned out Ozymandias was real, and so was the statue. This actually is part of the Ozymandias Colossus, which again was huge, nearly 70 feet tall. And Ozymandias turned out to be a mistranslation of Ramesses II's altar name. He had a special altar name, a very long name, and it's been mistranslated to create the name Ozymandias. Only the head and the feet remained, and the trunk part of it was Shelley's imagination, but nevertheless it was interesting to know such an evocative poem did have a basis in fact after all. Okay, have the next one. Again, now, this is a very intriguing one. Angkor Wat, the temple complex in Cambodia. One of the temples is Tar Prom, and in Tar Prom there are many, many glyphs, petroglyphs carved into the rock, about 800 years old. And if you look very carefully amongst them, you find this one. It's not particularly big, and it's just tucked away. It's not in a very conspicuous place, and it matches all of the others. It doesn't look new or anything like that. But, I mean, it goes without saying, if you look at that, it does look like a stegosaur dinosaur. There's no question about that. But what is a stegosaur dinosaur doing carved in an 800-year-old Cambodian temple? So, this is one of these wonderfully, totally out-of-place cryptozoological iconographical enigmas you get every so often. And again, until I did a piece on it in Fortean Times, I don't think it had ever really been covered before. So I thought, a chapter in Ancient Wonders, it needs to be put in that. And I think this book of mine is the first book ever to show this. In the book, there's also a second photo which shows it in place with all of the other glyphs near to it to give an idea of dimension and location within the temple. Okay, have another one. Yet another friend of mine did this picture. This is a famous bat squatch. There's a chapter on winged weirdos, for want of anything better, winged weird creatures, entities. I mean, this has got to be a paranormal entity. This is not cryptozoology. And this was about 9 feet tall. According to the eyewitness, descended from the skies in front of his car. The car's engine cut out, and this was in 1992. Mount Rainier in Washington State, and this is the creature that he saw. It stood, watched him for a time, and he just opened his wings and went up. Again, one of these interesting coincidences which didn't actually even register with me until I was doing the index. And when I was doing the index, I suddenly noticed Mount Rainier appears in 2 different places in the book. One of the places is Bat Squatch here, but the other place is, believe it or believe it not, Kenneth Arnold, the very famous UFO flotilla UFOs, has cited the whole modern-day UFO stream of sightings and reports. Just so happened to be Mount Rainier. in the 1940s. So 50 years apart roughly, a bit of a coincidence. Of all the places in the world, you get bat squatch to appear on the same mountain as overhead. Kenneth Arnold's absolutely crucial UFO sightings were made. Okay, next one. Again, yes, this is Richard Svensson's artwork again. This is the lacrosse man-bat, which supposedly attacked a lorry driven by two people near to La Crosse in Wisconsin as recently as 2006. Huge creature, massive wingspan, a beak instead of a mouth, and this looks more bat-like, but according to the sightings, the body was quite humanoid. So you're looking at kind of Mothman, Owlman, that type of category. But again, as far as I know, it's been quite well documented online, but I don't think it's appeared in a book before. And this was an exclusive picture done for the book. Okay, have another one. Okay, now we're back to the unicorn chapter that I mentioned earlier. And as I said, there are a huge diversity of unicorns, but you've probably never seen one of these before. This is a web-footed unicorn called a camphor, which I actually found by accident in a medieval bestiary. I was going through looking for, as usual, something quite different, and I came upon this amphibious web-footed unicorn. And the chapter that I've done is unicorns literally of the world. I mean, there are unicorns from almost every corner, even South America, North America, the whole of Europe, Asia. I think Australia is about the only place I didn't find it. And it's probably easy if I didn't go far, it would probably be an Australian unicorn. But I thought that was particularly unusual. We don't tend to think about amphibious unicorns. Okay, have the next one. This is a more recent unicorn, but a real one. This goes back to the 1980s, and this is Lancelot. And Lancelot is, needless to say, an artificial unicorn. He is, I don't know what you call him, he's an owner or his creator. Created Lancelot by splitting the embryonic horn buds of a goat, a newborn goat, and transplanting them into the centre of the head, where they united and they created this single massive horn. And so basically Lancelot is a unigoat and was shown on American TV and American side shows and so forth worldwide. And a lot of people said, oh, it's just a hoax, the horn was just glued on top or whatever. But I've actually been in contact with Oberon. He did a recent book called A Wizard's Bestiary, and he gave me all the information behind it. And he said, no, there's no hoax. Lancelot, he is dead now, but he was the first of a whole, what Oberon plans to be a whole race of unicorns by doing this transplantation series to create more unicorns and to show, interestingly, that unicorns are possible, because going back to Cuvier's days, Cuvier said it would be impossible for a horn to grow on the frontal bones, it just wouldn't happen. But apparently by transplantation it can and does happen. So that's, as I say, is the nearest thing possibly we'll ever get to a real live unicorn. Okay, next one. Okay, now this is Cosmic Leap. This is Philippa's original painting. And the final chapter in the book is another of my long-standing interests, and that's all about sky creatures. I've always been intrigued, I suppose, being a zoologist, I've always been intrigued by the fact that the whole of our planet, every square inch of sea, land, even underground, in the rocks, everywhere you can think of, there are species adapted exclusively to live there. And yet you look in the sky and there's absolutely nothing. There's no exclusively aerial creatures, no creature to spend their entire lives never coming down to land. And a lot of people have said, well, perhaps there are, perhaps some of the UFOs are not the most common identity for them, alien spacecraft or whatever, they're not lenticular clouds or weather balloons or anything else. Perhaps they're actually animate living creatures, living UFOs. And Trevor Constable did his book on what he calls critters, creatures in the sky. So there's a whole lot, a whole lot of disparate publications. So I've done quite a detailed chapter and brought all of those together, possibly for the first time, to cover sky creatures from almost basically every conceivable angle. Even the Foo Fighters are brought back into it, because some people have suggested that they were animate, their behaviour when they were, these balls of light, when they were tracing themselves around the aeroplanes in World War II, they behaved in an animate, thinking manner, a sentient manner. the pilots were almost playing tag with them, you know, they chase off and then they come back and then the aeroplane would follow them and then they go. And it was quite, the pilot said at the time, it was quite uncanny the way these entities behaved, because they looked at them as behaving rather than just moving. The activity was such a sentient way. So there's a whole chapter on that, and I think we've got one more picture left. Yeah, that's the one. That's another Philip Foster one. And Andrew Collins produced a book called The Circle Makers, and he says that in the book he believes that some of the crop-view circles, not the hopeless ones, but the complicated ones, are the result of sky creatures coming down to Earth and their energies creating patterns in the cornfield. I don't know, again, whether that's true or not, but it inspired Philip to produce this absolutely gorgeous painting of some balls of light, some animal balls of light, producing the crop-view circles. So, as you can see, it's nothing if not a diverse book, this latest one. I hope you'll enjoy it as much as the pure cryptozoology ones. I certainly enjoyed doing it. I'm glad John's been bold enough to go ahead with the publishing of it. So I think all it leaves me to say, thank you for coming. As you can see, there's a fair few books here. If you'd like to buy one, I'd be happy to sign them for you. And also, just a slight plug here, I've got a few of a rare edition of one of mine. Flying Toads to Snakes with Wings came out a few years ago in America, 1996. And did very well, and it also came out in Britain more recently, but it didn't get the publicity, to be honest, that it deserved, and so it didn't last as long. It lasted about 4 years. But I've got a few copies left, the last few of the publishers. So if you want something a bit unusual, you want to buy a British, totally different cover, slightly different book from the American one, the Flying Toads UK equivalent, I've got a few of those as well. Again, thank you for listening, and hope you enjoyed it.
One of the things Karl and I have got in common is we've both got the pack rat mentality. We never throw anything away. And we're both horrible collectors of things. Now, I know you're...
Horrible hoarders.
Horrible, yes.
I'm
sure you would, dear boy, I'm sure you would. And I still haven't forgiven you for scratching the chapter title, A Phalanx of Flying Folk. I want to use that one. I will get it in eventually. Okay. But the thing is, as you all know, if you buy a stamp on the first day, if you post a letter on the first day it comes out, it's worth an awful lot more. I don't know if this is the same with books, but this is the first time this book has ever been on sale. And so come on guys, come on and give me your money.
How much is it?
Oh God, I forgot to tell you. I'm even giving you a discount, because it's normally $14.99, but for today, and today only it's a tenner. And signed by the author. So come up and join me. David tried to put on something moody, musical, and magnificent. Graham, would you like to get some totally cheesy publicity photographs of Dr. Shuker? David, can you come down and have a quick word, please, mate?
Yeah.